Welcome back, Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really happy to tell you that Dr. Quinton Hennigh is with us once again. He is a member of the Crescat Capital Management Team and a director, and he serves Crescat as the firm's geologic and technical advisor. He's been with us so often, I'm not going to read over his entire biography because that would be redundant, but it is very worthwhile learning to know more about Quinton and his background if you're not familiar with him. Thanks for joining me again, Quinton.
Absolutely, Jay. This is always a pleasure.
It's always great to have you because you almost always have really exciting stories to talk about, and this is certainly one, Lion One's Tuvatu project in Fiji. I would like to just tell my listeners that they might want to pay some attention to the Crescat Gets Active videos that they're live. You can watch them on YouTube at 2 o'clock every Friday. And the reason I say that is because Lion One is one company that Quinton talks about from time to time, a host of companies that Crescat Capital invests in. And there's just a lot of great information if you really are invested in these companies and want to understand what's going on from a geological perspective as well as a business perspective. It's very valuable to watch these programs, and if you can't watch them live, they are available to you on YouTube afterwards as well. So I just wanted to encourage people to consider doing that. I should say, just before we get into this discussion, Lion One trades in Canada, LIO, LOMLF in the States, 156.4 million shares, trading about $1.08 in U.S. money, giving it a market cap about $170 million in U.S. money. And so that gives you an idea of the market capitalization, but I think, in my view, really understates its potential value. And so that's why really happy to have Quinton with me. Quinton, the last time we talked, it was right after the company's June 6th amazing assay report. I think the company reported a headline number of something like 20.86 grams of gold over 76 meters, something like that. Just ridiculous. And as you pointed out in the past, this is an alkaline deposit, and these things tend to be very high grade, and they usually pretty big projects that usually end up being produced and run by major mining companies. Those major mining companies like these big projects that can produce hundreds of thousands of ounces a year, if possibly. I'm not saying that's what this one will do, but comparing, you've seen many alkaline projects. You've been involved with some. How does this one compare with some of the others you've seen? Does it have a chance to be a multi-million ounce high-grade deposit in your view?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I talked about this last Friday on the video that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So we did a video on Friday, and in that, if you kind of thumb through the YouTube video, you can find the page. But I did talk about Lion One and what I think it can deliver. And I do think it's going to deliver something that's going to be of an interest to major mining companies. So to put this in perspective, look, there's some, but not a lot, of alkaline gold deposits around the Earth. But the ones that, like Tuvatu, the one we're talking about here, the ones that really deliver, they deliver bigly. If you look at Cripple Creek here in Colorado, for example, in the historic mines, the high-grade underground mines, they produce around 20 million ounces of gold at very high grades. Average grade for the life of mine for all of the mines at Cripple Creek was about a half an ounce per ton, so
wow.
15 grams per ton. And then, now Newmont, it was, it's had a long history. Creek and joint venture way back in the day, started open pit mining. It was bought by a succession of companies. Most recently, Newmont operates Cripple Creek and it's produced at least about, I think, another 8.5 or 9 million ounces.
Wow.
So it's up to about 29 million ounces production. Of course, they're mining the lower grade material now. But, these things are just incredible deposits. Now, Porgera over in New Guinea, which is actually closer to Fiji, and, geologically, I would say it's more similar, given it's in the Circumpacific, island, the Ring of Fire, the chain of volcanic islands. It is an exceptional deposit as well. It's very similar geologically to Tuvatu. It is associated with a monzonite intrusion that, basically an alkaline magma that kicked off a lot of gold, and it's produced I believe around 25 or 30 million ounces of gold at this point, has quite a bit of reserves left. It's a joint venture presently between Barrick and Zijin Mining, I believe, and it is absolutely hands down a tier one asset. It's produced a lot of gold over time, but it has a lot of life left to it. Once again, it's a testament to what these alkaline systems can deliver. Now, right there in Fiji, though, we have a nearby neighbor. It's called Vatukoula. Vatukoula formerly was known as the Emperor Mine, going way back in time, and it's been mined for probably onwards of 87 years, I believe, at this point, something like that. It's produced a little over 7 million ounces of gold in that lifetime. The early days, it was a very prolific producer. It produced, in excess of 100,000 ounces, or I think even close to 200,000 ounces at one point, way back in the day. In fact, it underpinned Western Mining's, mining portfolio. Western Mining was a famous Australian company. It was a multi-commodity company, but they did well at Emperor Mine. Anyway, that deposit has around 4 million ounces of reserves and resources left. So, in aggregate, it's a little over 11 million ounces. So right there next to Tuvatu, we have a direct analog. So, yeah, I would say there's a very good chance that Tuvatu can deliver one of these multi-million ounce, very large, very desirable alkaline gold projects.
As I was reviewing that June 6th press release, I noticed that it seemed as though it's still in mineralization at the bottom of the hole and more than 500 meters down, and high grade at that. Do these systems tend to run very deep, and do they get richer sometimes at depth?
They do. They're kind of. I think the last time I spoke with you, or sometime here recently, I've interviewed, and if you think of these things like drilling a tree from the top down, that's the best analogy I can use. They have a lot of they're fracture hosted or fissure hosted. Like the cracks in the ground or what took up the fluids and host the mineralization now. But they, the pattern of these fractures as they come out of the ground and they emerge towards surface, they tend to spread out and become smaller and smaller limbs, like a tree. All right. So up until this point, really up until about 2020, the company focused on the upper branches. They drilled a decent resource, a few 100,000 ounces, I think 600,000 ounces and change, in what we call the upper limbs. And then in 2020, we right in the middle of COVID there, we swung for the fence and drilled a deeper hole. We drilled a hole underneath the existing resource in an area where some geophysics suggested we might have a structure, a potential host fracture for mineralization. That's when we hit that 12.7 meters of 55 grams, I believe it was. And that told us, there are some bigger branches down there, bigger and higher grade branches. But we've been plumbing this thing, poking holes down there now for about 2 years. And all of them have hit, interestingly. Like all of the holes that go down into that deep regime have hit, offsets to that original 500 load intercept. But this one that we had about a month and a half ago just, shot the lights out, as they say. It really delivered. And, within that 70-odd meter intercept, there was 30-odd meters of about an ounce per ton. And that's the kind of, when I see that, it smells like the trunk of the tree. It's definitely a major conduit. Now, that said, okay, Jay, that intercept is actually not all that deep. So when you put it in perspective of alkaline systems, this thing could carry on down into the, to the crust for a ways. We probably have another kilometer of runway below this at least. So, we basically poked the upper part of the trunk way up high, and there's a lot of potential left here.
Right, and there's a lot of potential laterally with other deposits, I think, along some 7 kilometers of strike, but that's another story. This is just tremendous exploration potential, but I want to ask you, with regard to potential with exploration, the company's also moving towards, I guess, small-scale production to start with. To what extent is the company now focused on sort of infill drilling and engineering and that sort of thing to get ready for production? And to what extent is it still seeking to expand mineralization?
Okay, so it's really a two-pronged approach at this point. They do have this exploration because deeper, higher grade mineralization we've been talking about can have a profound effect on the ultimate outcome of developing a mine. They are now talking about putting a ramp down to these areas where this higher grade and thicker mineralization is to get better access, for both drilling it and then ultimately developing it. Okay, but at the same time, the company is moving towards production. It's actually doing definition drilling up high in those upper limbs right now, producing amazing results. I mean, just news release after news release, every single news release has many, many drill intervals, infill drill intervals of very high grade. Mm-hmm. In fact, they're seeing higher grades overall in that upper part of the system than even the resource, estimated.
Wow.
So I think that's very encouraging. But the plan is, just like it has been, to develop a modest scale mine, effectively a test scale mine at about 300 or 400 tons per day level initially, but that could be expanded very quickly. The word here, I guess, would be, optionality is the best way to put it. They have this, crazy upside exploration, and like you said, it's over 7 kilometers across the caldera. But they also have this, a prospect of building a mine fairly quickly because it is a granted mining lease. They're fully permitted. They're all ready to rock and roll. And so I think, this is one of the gold market's struggling, right? It's been difficult in watching even a great story like this, it's been up lately, but it's not been like we'd hope it would be, like $3 or $4 or $5 a share or something.
Yeah. Right.
But it is the story. I think it is one of these stories that when the gold space does come back around, is absolutely going to kill it for a lot of investors. So I'm in spite of the melees in the gold market, sounds like Ukraine sold a bunch of gold. God forbid. But anyway, I think this is one to keep a close eye on. Put some money in. It's cheap now. It's not, gold's not going anywhere. 2 years from now, you'll be laughing. You'll be very grateful you did.
Well, I believe that's probably true. And I would like to remind investors and listeners that Walter Burkhoff, the company's chairman, this won't be his first success. He's had, I think, 3 others that he's done very well with. And I guess probably developed those projects up to the point where they would be attractive. I think Newmont picked one of them up. I think Yamana, one of the other ones. And so this could be, I think, I would guess that if it's really, really, really big, the company would probably be looking for a Newmont or a Barrick or some major company to come in. And not that they have to. They do have people that can take this thing into production, and I believe they have the talent to do that, right?
That's correct. The team members are exceptional. I've introduced some of the team members to Wally. So Sergio Catalani is the Vice President of Exploration, done a fantastic job. Will Estranga, who's working with him, also came in at my recommendation. But then Patrick Hickey is helping develop the mine. He's the COO and working towards developing the mine. So Patrick he and I worked at Newmont. He knows how to build mines on islands, if you will. That's special, believe it or not.
Sure.
So you have like the A team here at all levels. Yeah, very, very good team. And there were a lot of good existing members too. I don't want to diminish that either. There's a real team in place.
Well, that's part of the optionality, a different kind of optionality. It's important, too. The majors can't just sit back and say, well, we'll just take advantage of these guys. They can't put it in production. We'll walk away and we'll get it for nothing. They'll walk away and we'll get it for nothing. So they can't do that, perhaps, with Lion One. Just one more thing I'd like to ask you about, Quinton. You did mention, as you talked about Lion One, Crescat gets active. In fact, you talked about quite a few companies last week, and you sort of gave an overall view of the company. You also said how much of each company's shares that Crescat was invested in, and I was expecting that Lion One would be one of those that was up there around 19% or 15 or 12 or something. It was a lot lower than that, and so I said, wow, this doesn't make sense. But I think it's important for investors to realize that there are times of opportunities to invest, and then sometimes there's just not an opportunity. I mean, it's
a bit historic. If you look at the market cap, when I was advising Kevin and Tavi to begin with a couple years ago, the market cap of Lion One was already $200 million and change. So they did participate in the placement at that time. Mm-hmm. It was difficult to kind of muscle in and get a decent piece, but they did buy what they could. And then they have been nibbling away at the market. So with that nibbling, I think they're up to almost 2% right now. It's not a huge stake, but in terms of dollar, it's commensurate with the rest of our fund because it's around, say, call it $4 or $5 million in value Canadian. Mm-hmm. And our fund basically manages about 200 and some odd million, so like 220, I think, right now. So in that perspective, that's kind of where we want it. We got about 90 companies in our portfolio, and we do play in a lot of stories. Now, some companies, we got in earlier, so they're the ones we typically have that 19% in because we got in cheap and early.
Yep. Right, exactly. And some of those are very, very exciting. You'll be talking about them as news comes about on Crescat gets active. Just one more thing. I saw working capital about $37 million. I presume that's enough in the immediate future to keep Lion One going.
That's correct. Yes, it keeps the exploration and progress towards mining going. Absolutely, they're in a good position, especially in this market.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much, Quinton, for spending the time with us to update us on Lion One. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.